Hello there, folks, and welcome to this introductory webinar on the Canmore Area Trails Strategy. My name is Kevin Wirtanen, and I'll be facilitating today's session, and thanks for taking the time to join us today. We're here to talk trails in the Canmore area, to share an overview of the Canmore Area Trails Strategy Project, or CATS, as you may hear it referred to, and to hear some of your questions about it. We'll have about an hour today, and leading up to the session, we weren't positive who would be able to attend it, so we have pre-recorded a presentation that we'll be sharing with you shortly. It should take us to about 4:30, at which time we'll come back live for some questions here. A few housekeeping items before I begin. In the background, we are grateful to have Maurice Burnell, who will be helping us with technical matters. Everyone is auto-muted at this time. The full session, the full webinar, will be recorded, and we will share this to the project's webpage. Please take note of the questions as you hear the presentation. If you'd like to ask them, please submit them using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. At the end of the pre-recorded presentation, we'll pick up on the questions submitted. We'll lean on some of the people in the room to help us answer those. Please note that we'll be trying to keep answers at a strategy level, and we likely won't have time today for trail by trail or turn by turn level questions. So without further delay, I do want to quickly introduce a few people associated with the project that are here with us today and that will help with those questions following the presentation. On our project planning team, we have our two Alberta Forestry and Parks project leads. We have Peggy Holroyd, planning team lead for the Kananaskis region. Hello, Peggy. Leah Schmidek, manager infrastructure planning and coordination. I believe we have Maggie Scallion, outdoor recreation and trail manager with McElhaney. Maggie's colleague Matt Hadley and my colleague Justin Ellis from the project's consulting team were not able to join us today. And among some of the others, we have Debbie Muka, Kananaskis West area manager for Alberta Forestry and Parks. Alaric Fish, manager of the Canmore Nordic Center. Dwayne Fieser, Operations Support Manager here in Kananaskis. John Piskowski, Park Ecology Team Lead, Kananaskis Region. Hope we have John here now. Brad Jones, Recreation Manager, Recreation Education and Partnership Section in the Lands Operations Division of Alberta Forestry and Parks. And with that, I'm going to ask Maurice now to switch us to the recorded session. I'll be monitoring any incoming questions. And when you see me come back on with this collared shirt, you'll know that we're live again and we can start walking through those questions. So thanks for joining us, and Maurice, I'll turn it to you to start the recording. Well, hello, and welcome to this pre-recorded presentation on the Canmore Area Trails Strategy, or CATS for short. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. We're here to talk Canmore Trails and to introduce the CATS project. Some of our project team were unavailable to participate in our live session, so we pre-recorded an introductory presentation so you could hear from them directly. My name is Kevin Wirtanen. I work with RC Strategies, and together with McElhaney, we've been assisting Alberta Forestry and Parks with components of the CATS project. I'm of Finnish, Polish, and English settler heritage, and while my grandparents grew up in southwest Calgary and spent much of their lives in the Bow and Elbow Valleys in the early 1900s, I live here in Treaty 6 territory and work out of Amiskwaciy, Waskahegan here in Edmonton. I am, though, a longtime lover of the trails in your area, but I've always been a visitor. Many of you attending this session probably know the area's trails better than I do, but I'll be today's facilitator, and I feel very honored to be part of this conversation and to have an opportunity to help with this project. As we begin, it's critically important that we acknowledge that we are all treaty people. The remarkable lands that we're considering here today are located in the traditional territories of the Blackfoot and the peoples of the Treaty 7 region, including the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai First Nations, the Stoney Nakoda, the Chiniki Bearspaw and Goodstoney First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation. We're also within Métis Nation of Alberta District 4. Now, growing up, my grandparents shared stories with me about the many positive interactions that they had with the generous, highly skilled, and proud peoples they met while traveling and exploring this valley by foot, by bicycle in the 1920s and the 1930s. They felt humbled and privileged to see, to share, and experience the area, And as we embark on this project, I hope we can remain especially mindful and respectful of the original peoples who have called this area home for many thousands of years. Finally, throughout this presentation, you'll hear repeated references to two important documents, the draft CATS project terms of reference and the Canmore Area Trails Strategy background review. If you haven't reviewed them already, both can be downloaded from the main Government of Alberta's project landing page. Today's session is introductory. We want to share general information about what the CATS project is, its purpose, where it applies, what's in scope and what's not, what we hope to achieve, and how the project will proceed. We'll have about 35 minutes today for this presentation, and we won't have a lot of time for detail. We have, though, compiled a lot of that detail, and if you haven't reviewed some of it already, we'll be pointing to where and how you can find it. And more importantly, we'll be sharing where and how you can reflect and share input on where we've come with the project and where we're going with it. Working with Indigenous communities, residents, organizations, partnering municipalities, and others, the primary deliverable of the CATS project will be a comprehensive strategy-level document that guides development, operations, management, funding, activation, and access to matters related to trails in the Bow Valley. Along the journey to completing this document, we have a lot of work to do and many important values to consider and perspectives to hear. Cultural values, ecological values, recreation values, and we've done some reaching out already. We've learned a lot, but we do need to learn more. The strategy will be a guiding document for Alberta Forestry and Parks partners and others within the trail ecosystem, including organizations contributing to trail stewardship and operations. And as part of this, it will also help guide capital funding to projects to support habitat preservation and high-quality trail experiences. The Canmore Area Trails Strategy project is being led by the province of Alberta, specifically Alberta Forestry and Parks. The geographical scope of the project area includes all lands within the blue boundary shown on the map. The area can roughly be described as being east of Banff National Park, west of the Stoney Nakoda First Nation Reserve, and includes lands administered by the province, the Crown lands comprised of provincial parks and provincial public land, Town of Canmore, and the MD of Bighorn lands. This map can also be found in the draft Canmore Area Trails Strategy terms of reference, as well as the background review document. Recommendations that are developed and included in the strategy will apply to trails and land in provincial parks and on provincial public land. The recommendations will not specifically apply to privately held lands, nor will they apply directly to the Town of Canmore or the MD of Bighorn. The town and the MD, however, are partners in the project, and consideration will be given to how trails connect with and interface with these municipalities and other desirable destinations. And for working purposes, all trails in the area are included as part of the digital trail inventory for a fulsome and holistic understanding of the existing trail network in the area. Trails and human use are not new to this area. Human use and route finding in these parts has been going on since time immemorial. So why are we undertaking this project? To make sense of and create order in the trail system? I'm going to let Matt speak a little bit more about this. Over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Kevin. Just take a moment to think about why you choose to live, work, and recreate in the Bow Valley. It's a special place, but it's not only special for us, it's special for the wildlife too. Bow Valley has been designated as a key wildlife and biodiversity zone and is home to provincial and federal at-risk species. Groups like the Bow Corridor Ecosystem Advisory Group have done great foundational work to identify the key wildlife corridors that incorporate the known wildlife movement patterns. On this map, you'll see a zoomed out overview of the wildlife corridors and patches in the project area. The darker green polygons are the habitat patches, and the lighter green shades are the wildlife corridors. These are non-developable lands that are there to encourage wildlife residence and passages. And these habitat zones are under pressure from human use. This next map shows the same areas, but we've overlaid the Town of Canmore boundaries, the MD of Bighorn boundaries, and the industrial dispositions. Much of these areas are heavily developed with residential, commercial, or industrial usage, or have plans for future development. Development of all kinds creates segmentation of the landscape and puts strain on the natural ecosystems. Now we overlaid all the trails onto the same map. There's approximately 1,030 kilometers of trails in the study area, leaving relatively few areas untouched for the wildlife. The green trails on the map are designated or authorized trails, while the ones shown in orange are undesignated or have not gone through an approval process. Basically, 2/3 of the trails in the Bow Valley are not authorized or approved. Our project is to make sense of what trails exist and understand why users are developing unauthorized trails, and figure out how we can make a trail system meet the current and future user experience requirements. Some of the key themes that emerged through our field inventory of traveling trails in the Bow Valley were developed organically by users following historic linear disturbances, wildlife trails, and other avenues of the path of least resistance. Trails are created for a variety of reasons: climbing routes, direct path hiking trails, equestrian trails, mountain bike trails. And as a result, many of the trails were created on the most direct, simplest route to a destination. We have a diverse range of trail experiences and trails in the Bow Valley, but we can do a whole lot better. Unauthorized trail construction is occurring to develop trail experiences that don't currently exist within the authorized network. Over to you, Kevin.
Scope is how we define the boundaries of a project, and it's what guides us on what to include and what not to include. This summarized project scope is a slightly simplified version of what is presented in the draft project terms of reference. Most important thing to remember is that CATS is a trail strategy. It will be about trails, trail experiences, trail issues, trail management, and trail solutions for groundland in the Canmore area. Trail things and things affected by trails are generally in scope for this project. Matters beyond trails, including land use decisions and provincial policy, are outside of the scope of this strategy, and as is detailed in trail designs of specific trails. So at a strategy level, some of the general types of recommendations that we could expect to see in a final Canmore Area Trail Strategy might include things like clear references to the values that the strategy is supporting, the issues it is trying to address, and the desired conditions the strategy is working towards. We might see recommendations relating to where trails should be, but not tree by tree or turn by turn level. Could see what trail experiences are being supported and the locations that they might be located in a general sense. What management actions could be taken to address issues and to support achieving and maintaining our desired conditions. And that it could include things like signage, infrastructure, general design, or visitor use management approaches. Please note that this initiative is nested within the existing regulatory policy and planning environments of the Government of Alberta, and it will not affect or override this higher level direction. It's also at a strategy level, and more detailed planning will be required to implement some recommendations, such as those precise infrastructure designs and trail locations. The CAS project is structured into 6 phases with multiple engagement opportunities. The first phase of the project, getting a handle on what exists and preparing initial products to represent and share this information, actually started last year. Significant work went into developing that detailed inventory and assessment of the area's trail network and compiling what was known about it. This and much more has been summarized in the Canmore Area Trail Strategy background review document. From there, we moved on to phase 2. Over the winter, we invited about 40 prominent organizations and interests from Indigenous communities, as well as environmental, recreation, tourism, industry, municipal, and landowner interests to participate on a project advisory group. As a group, they served as a sounding board for the early project, and they've been very active and very helpful in shaping and providing context for the work so far. Importantly, they've reviewed and provided input on the background review document. They've helped shape the project's draft terms of reference, and most recently, they helped to provide the project team with significant detail associated with the issues that exist in the area. And they provided initial suggestions on the kinds of management actions that might be suitable for addressing these trail issues. Which brings us to where we are now, phase 3. Before moving on with the project, it was important to pause and to test what we have with residents, communities, Indigenous communities, and Albertans. For about the next month, using this survey and online mapping opportunity in conversations with community, we'll be seeking feedback on this initial work and your thoughts on the direction that the strategy should take. After we close this phase of engagement, we'll be digesting, analyzing, and summarizing input that we received and using this to inform an initial draft of the strategy. And at risk of being redundant, we don't yet have that final draft strategy, and we're reaching out to you for your early thoughts so that we can use that input to inform the first draft of the strategy in phase 4. When that draft is ready, we'll be back in phase 4 to hear what folks think about it, and we'll use that feedback to inform edits for a final draft of the strategy in phase 6. Here's a simplified overview of who is involved. It's, as mentioned, it's being led by the Ministry of Forestry and Parks, but with some connections to the mandates of other Government of Alberta ministries. The town of Canmore and the MD of Bighorn are partners. We're working with Treaty 7 nations, and we're also involving input, perspective, and advice of residents, organizations, and interests, as well as visitors to the area. How will CAS be developed? Broadly, we're going to lean on the respected visitor use management framework approach. At a basic level, the process follows the steps of why, what, how, do. We invite you to learn more about the VUMF process by searching Visitor Use Management Framework or visiting the URL here. You'll find background, tools, handbooks, and other resources at that page. There are 3 points that we'd like to stress here. We're still early in the process. We've considered the why, and using the sounding board of the advisory group, we've considered the possibilities of much of the what. Now, before fully detailing and document the management strategies we want to take, we need your help to confirm that we're on the right track. Number 2, please don't get hung up on the word visitor in the VUMF. The planning framework was developed by the US-based Interagency Visitor Use Management Council. It's what they named this process in the context of what they do. They manage use and visitation, and it's how the process works that's important, not necessarily what the process is called. Number 3, don't get hung up on the fact that it's US-based. It's just good process. The VUMF is being adopted by organizations and initiatives across North America and around the world, including other provincial park agencies and Parks Canada, because it's intuitive, it's flexible, it can handle complexity, it can reflect and respond to community interests, and it can work for initiatives like this one. Let's talk now about some of what we found and learned in earlier work, and Peggy's going to speak to this.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so on wildlife and habitat, there's a lot more detail in the background review, but I'm just going to share a few slides that give you a window into the kind of analysis that we're looking to do for the Canmore Area Trails Strategy. So the Bow Valley is widely recognized as one of the most important wildlife movement corridors in the Central Rockies ecosystem. The valley bottom is vital to a variety of animal species owing to its flat topography, of course, relative to the surrounding alpine regions, and high plant productivity. Many of the species inhabiting the Bow Valley, including many of those considered at risk at the provincial and/or federal level, are negatively affected by human use and loss of habitat. There are designated wildlife corridors and habitat patches that require special human use management to minimize the impacts of human use on wildlife and wildlife movement. This project is focused on organizing trail planning, development, and management to meet recreational demand in a way that integrates wildlife and habitat considerations. So I'm going to show you an example of the analysis that we're working on. This map shows carnivore habitat quality. It's modeled from habitat data and real-time large carnivore movement data. It shows how the majority of good or excellent habitat is relatively restricted to the lower gradient slopes. And we modeled the influence of human use on the quality of habitat. So the curves shown here, although perhaps daunting at first, they represent various scientific studies on the effect of non-motorized human recreation on wildlife habitat, which is measured by the distance from human use activity. The bolded curves in red and blue above show the Canmore area specific study that was recently conducted in advance of CATS, and it can be compared to the other existing studies that estimate this relationship using a variety of methods. The distance at which human activity affects wildlife is called the zone of influence. This influence can affect wildlife behavior, such as causing wildlife to be stressed, expend more energy, and affect their ability to reproduce. The presence of humans can also cause wildlife to leave an area altogether. Many studies have shown that wildlife can adapt if human use is predictable in where it occurs and when, such as a time of day or a season. Through the development of CATS, we're going to look at how to improve the quality of habitat in the area while creating high-quality trails for people to recreate and creating opportunities for education and awareness about safe recreation near wildlife.
Canmore and the surrounding area offer a unique recreation and tourism experience and provide the opportunity for a wide variety of residents and visitors to participate in outdoor activities. The project area is a destination for hiking, biking, trail running, rock climbing, mountaineering, and cross-country skiing, among other sports. Immediately adjacent to the internationally renowned Banff National Park, the Canmore area offers similar recreation opportunities to Banff, however with fewer regulations regarding home ownership and land use. From an analysis of the user data, we found that almost half of the trail users within the project area reside in Calgary, and that non-local users account for more than 2/3 of the total trail use within the project area. Canmore is a destination for trail use, and it draws users from major centers across Alberta and British Columbia. Trail-based recreation is an important local economic driver with approximately 3 million visitors per year to the study area. This use generates $345 million in tourism revenues annually and $200 million in wages and salaries as a result of permanent jobs. Regardless of what activity a user is participating in, every trail user is looking for a trail to provide the experience they desire. And we need to pair the correct trail experience with the correct user in the correct location. From our field data, we analyzed the status of the current trails. On the left, we have the designation of trails with 32% being designated, and the large portion of the pie, or 68% of the trails, are undesignated, meaning that they did not go through an approval process and likely were not planned with wildlife or sustainable trail principles in mind. The use type chart on the right shows that when we understood who is using the trail and why, we documented it. So that could be single use, typically the high alpine trail running or hiking or scrambling trails are single use, or multi-use, meaning it's often pedestrian, biking, and sometimes equestrian. Unknown is where we did not fully understand who is using the trail and why, and these are areas we're trying to better understand through this engagement process. The trails were all assessed for trailhead sustainability concerns, the use type, and trail difficulty. And these charts here show that a significant portion of the trail network is of moderate difficulty. You can find a more detailed explanation of these charts in the background review. We want your help solving the challenges on this busy landscape, and Kevin will now explain how to participate in the CATS project in the next few slides.
The draft project terms of reference is a description of what the project is. It articulates the general context for the project, the study area, the project's purpose, objectives, scope, principles, and process. It also, like the screen capture from section 8 of the document outlines, where some of the pressing and prominent issues and opportunities exist, broadly categorized into 6 themes shown here, with some examples in the document. A bit further on in the document, the terminology with visitor use management framework is used, and it introduces some of the potential desired conditions that can serve as desired outcomes for the project. This, and as the title reads, will set the project's terms and will serve as a primary reference moving forward. The background review, as mentioned a few times, is really a weighty summarization of what exists and what was found. It summarizes guiding documents, policies, and legislation, provides overview of land uses, environmental, cultural, and social considerations, and it shows a very detailed description of the trail network by planning unit. As mentioned, we're now in phase 3 of the project, and we're testing the work we've completed in a potential direction with you. Does it feel right? Does it reflect the interests and aspirations you might have? Does it name and identify the types of issues and opportunities that you see? Do you have ideas on the direction it should take, could take, and potentially the types of management actions that we should be considering in the strategy? As of June 24th, public engagement was opened on this phase of the project. And before we close, we want to share a bit more about the engagement opportunities. And we should say that we strongly encourage a thorough review of both the terms of reference draft and the background review before participating in these opportunities. First opportunity we want to show here is the opportunity to participate in the in-depth anonymous online survey. Participants should expect to dedicate about 15 to 25 minutes to this, depending on the sections that you might want to contribute to and with how much depth. Following some general questions about your interests, how you use trails, and where you use trails, the survey then explores your perspectives on the primary content of the project's draft terms of reference. What do you think about the purpose, the objectives, the principles, the issues, and the opportunities to be considered? What kinds of future conditions do you feel are important to the strategy? Ecological, cultural, trail experience, management, community, economic opportunities as some. The survey closes with some standard demographic questions, and the QR code here will take you to the project's landing page with more information and links to the survey. The second opportunity, which we hope you'll take part in, is an engagement instrument that we just commonly refer to as being our online mapping tool. It's at this site that participants will have the opportunity to look at the existing trail network, zoom in on it, and reflect on its strengths and weaknesses, consider how it integrates with and impacts important values, such as wildlife corridors, and provide spatial feedback on what is and what could be. You'll see in the tool, when you use it, that you'll have an opportunity to use 4 colored pins that you can drop at precise locations on the map and provide input on trail opportunities, trail issues, management-related issues, and other thoughts and suggestions. Finally, members of the project team and potentially other volunteers and staff will be present at a number of trailheads over the next few weeks. We'll be pointing folks to provide detailed thoughts through the online survey and online map, but we'll also be having conversations about issues, opportunities, and potential direction, and of course, hearing and documenting those suggestions. And with that, for those of you participating live, we'll transition to some live questions. For those of you that are watching the recorded version of this, please visit the project webpage, review the documents and information there, and share your thoughts through the survey and online mapping tool. Thank you. Well, hello, and welcome to this pre-recorded presentation on the Canmore. Just about got to listen to that all again. That's great. Well, welcome back, folks. We are live now, and this is an opportunity now for folks that have been listening and watching the presentation to submit your questions now using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. What you've heard, we hope, will ground us in a common understanding of what the project is and what it hopes to accomplish, the path we'll walk to develop it. The project's terms of reference, draft terms of reference, and the background review, as you've heard, are very important reference documents that we also hope that you'll review because they contain a lot of great detail there. Let's take some time to answer some of your questions. The project team and Government of Alberta staff, if you can get your unmute fingers ready, and I'll pick on one of you that I think might be in a good position to answer any incoming questions. And I'll say your name, and then I'll read the question and look to you to help us with it. So we've got one question that came in for us here, and so I'm going to Peggy, I'll eventually turn this to you here, but I think I can handle most of it as well. Has there been any discussion about the ongoing interface with all trails to comment, mark as closed, remove undesignated trails through wildlife corridors? I've had many conversations with people looking to go up Grassy Knob, for example, and each time I tell them that a trail is closed because it's a wildlife corridor, in a wildlife corridor. And I'll get back, but I saw it on all trails, and this is just one example of the widespread sense of entitlement some people have that they should be able to go anywhere they want. That's a great question, and we heard very clearly from the advisory group that making sure that we have informed users properly informed users in the area is highly relevant to the strategy. And I think you'll see some examples of that in, I think it's number 6 within our draft project terms of reference there. Loud and clear, very, very clear concerns about that. And they have suggested some ways that we might want to consider dealing with that. Peggy, anything else from you?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. It's a tricky one, and I'll pick on Dwayne as well if he has anything to add, because he's been managing Trail Forks for some time. We've just gotten access to a back-end portal of All Trails, which is very exciting. They have a new public lands portal. And it allows us to add information alerts and closure alerts to trails. We can also edit the detailed description of trails and change some of the buttons that generate the auto-generated descriptor at the very beginning. Things like, is it family friendly or is it difficult trail? So we can also alter the routing of trails. We can't necessarily, unless we have really good cause, take trails off all trails. But we've started to pick away at some trails to see what impact it might have. So in the Highwood last summer, we added information alerts, which are now part of the general descriptor of most trails in the Highwood, that describe whether or not the trail is designated, what kind of parking facilities it has, what kind of toilet facilities, if any, how you should be bear aware, some links to our website for first-time hikers. And from a U of A survey that was done last summer, we show some success that people are noticing this alert. There's still some work to do and with All Trails to get it to be even more noticed, but we're just trying to pick away as we can at some of the main issues especially where we're seeing safety problems as a result of posts on All Trails and other apps. So absolutely, if there are Grassy Knob, I'll go look at it. And if there's other suggestions, let me know through the Kananaskis.projects email. And we'll see what we can do to improve the information on those apps.
Thanks, Peggy.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly chime in there, Kevin. As it relates to Trail Forks, so users out there may recognize that Trail Forks is largely used by the mountain bike community. All Trails seems to have a broader usership. With Trail Forks itself, over the last few years, we've managed to do things like lay in the park boundaries, town of Canmore boundaries, this is with support from some of our partners like Canva. And then we found that it's actually been quite helpful in helping people recognize A, where they are, and B, where they should be. Though we don't have immediate data on the impacts of these apps and on user behavior, but we do recognize that everybody is using these apps, so we're trying to engage with those apps in sharing the information as well. And we're open, as Peggy said, to suggestion through the project email. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Dwayne. Thanks, Peggy. And the suggestions that we'll hear that are relevant to sort of boosting the literacy and awareness of users, trail users in the area, we'll be building some of those strategies and tactics into the strategy there. Great. Another question coming in. Just reading it now here. Yes. Okay. So Peggy, this is a process question. So the question reads: were all Indigenous groups included in pre-consultation, and how will it be ensured that their input is included in the draft? Were environmental groups and other experts outside of the Government of Alberta included in the advisory group and to provide external input? Will environmental groups be thoroughly engaged prior to drafting? So that's our incoming question there, Peggy.
Yeah, good question. Okay, so the first bit, were all Indigenous groups included in pre-consultation? Yes. All Treaty 7 nations were invited to be part of the advisory group. Siksika, Kainai, Tsuut'ina are all participating right now on the advisory group, and Piikani are observers. And every stage of the process, we will go back to the Indigenous groups, whether they're part of the advisory group or not. They can meet with us one-on-one. And we're also doing some field visits with many of those nations. So they can do traditional land use assessments or cultural assessments in the area and understand some of the issues that are being dealt with right now, current issues. The second question was about environmental groups. So yes, a number of environmental groups were engaged. We have, in terms of experts, we engaged, I was mentioning in the pre-recording, the wildlife analysis that we're doing. So we engaged Dr. Peter Thompson from the University of Alberta to do that analysis. He's working with John Paszkowski, and I believe they're working on an academic paper to come from that wildlife assessment. We also engaged, I mentioned the U of A study in the Highwood. They also did a similar survey in the Canmore area, looking at, it's more of a social science survey actually, asking the public at different trailheads last summer where they're going, what they're doing, why, what they value about the trails, but then focusing in on their knowledge of human-wildlife coexistence. And there was even a couple questions in there asking people's willingness to accept restrictions or temporal changes to the trail management in order to manage for wildlife. So some super interesting results coming out of the U of A, and they're working on their academic papers as well to publish for that. In terms of environmental groups on the advisory group, we have a number of them. I'm just looking at the list here. We have the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative. We have the Biosphere Institute of the Bow Valley. Friends of Kananaskis could be considered in that category. We have the Alberta Conservation Association, Alberta TrailNet. There's a bunch of Alpine Club of Canada. There's a bunch of groups that are also recreation groups, but do have an environmental interest for sure. So I think that answers that one. And yes, so that's our intent is that these environmental groups be thoroughly engaged, and any that aren't on the advisory group, we absolutely invite them, as they did in our other planning processes, such as in West Bragg, to submit their own responses to the survey or their own reports with advice on what we should do in the Canmore Area Trail Strategy. And all through that, again, that email, kananaskis.projects.
Yeah, that's
Thanks,
great.
Kevin.
Thanks, Peggy. And maybe I'll just add on as well there that the advisory group will be they've been stood down temporarily while we work through our public engagement phase there. And as we move into the drafting phase of the project, we're going to reconvene them and using them as a sounding board for some of the drafting content as well. So that that hopefully will help ensure that to the point about it being thoroughly engaged prior to drafting. They'll be engaged prior to drafting and during drafting of both draft in both the draft phases and the final draft phases there. So hopefully that answers that question. I'm not seeing any other questions. So folks that are online, please get your typing fingers busy there. And we've got a few more minutes. I'm just going to be quiet here just for a moment or two. See if we get any other incoming questions. Okay, folks, I'm not seeing any questions come up. If you are busy typing, maybe just send us a quick note and we'll wait for you. Okay, oh, there we got one. Excellent. Incoming question. This is mapping related. So do we have Maggie here? For the interactive mapping, are you hoping one of the inputs will be priorities for connecting designated trails? That's a great question, because we're also considering the opportunities for improved trail experiences. So interconnectivity of trails, that's something that we heard loud and clear from the advisory group. But definitely it is a priority to connect high quality, good trails that are occurring in the area that support the other values that we're considering here. Is there anybody else that wants to take this one? Maggie or Peggy?
Yeah, and Dwayne, who leads the trails team may have something to add. I was just going to say, absolutely, that's part of the exercise, is understanding what are the needs of visitors and residents in terms of trails. Are there places that they're trying to go via undesignated trails that we need to consider creating a designated trail? It may not be in that exact location. Maybe there's a reason that it's an undesignated trail that goes through a wildlife corridor, a habitat patch, but maybe there's another way. Often we try to put our trails on the edges of our wildlife corridors because of that zone of influence impact I was talking about earlier. So absolutely, we are interested in understanding where we're missing those connections between our designated trails.
Dwayne, did you have anything you want to mention there?
Nothing specific. I think Peggy nailed it. Ultimately, yes, the interactive mapping tool will be helpful in identifying people's favorite trails, connections, etc. And from the data that we gather, we intend and plan to build a better network for everyone, quite frankly.
Yeah, great. And we don't have it in front of us right now, but on the interactive mapping tool, there were the 4 pin categories: trail opportunity, trail issues, management issues, and other thoughts. And that's a great example of where a trail opportunity could be found. There is where should those connections be? So, okay, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Not seeing any other questions, I'm going to suggest that we bring this session to a close. We thank you again for taking the time to join us here today, and we invite you to take part in both the online survey and the online map. And please watch for us on the trailheads over the next few weeks. We'd love to talk to you in person. And with that, thank you very much and have a great day.